I have some wire at home, but I know. Do you have any wire?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not now.
Oh, no, I was like.
No, that's a thank you to go home.
Alright, it's nice and
That's
that's
sweet. And I know I forget.
And then I thought you said water, so I thought there were those. I thought they were in there.
All right,
We'll get there.
is everyone ready? I think I'd like to call this joint workshop of the school committee and the select board. I believe it is 5:35 p.m. on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. The purpose of this meeting is a budget discussion between the school and the select board. Do we need to approve the agenda? Jeff Putnam is not here. Thus my stumbling, because he is more proficient.
Given that it's a workshop, we can keep it informal.
Yeah, okay.
Do you want me to kick it off with just a couple comments about where we are? Jeff had asked a question.
Sure.
Yeah, we would. So in general, we're on track with our normal process as information becomes available and as discussions happen, the town budget continues to evolve. The big picture for this year is the need to put a lot of capital into the budget as much as we can afford. From the standpoint of the physical challenges that we have, Stone Pier, but also on the other side of the bay, that pier where Cousins is challenged, a lot of the sea level rise kind of issues. Well, a lot of capital challenges. And then we made a decision last year to invest in building up our team and our capabilities and our capacity, and that has implications as well. That was a pretty solid hue and cry from the public asking that we step up our game in terms of the capacity of the town to deal with everything from building permits to taking care of the roads. Along with those changes, in addition to salaries, obviously the salaries go up, insurances go up. Insurances, as you guys know, are going up anyway. So that's the big picture from our side. I'll let Vika speak more because she knows a lot more about this than I do. Our revenue picture will continue to evolve as we get bits and pieces of information in on what we can expect for revenue next year. And I think we have a placeholder in there for undesignated fund balance for both the school and also for the town. Those can be finalized later. I'd just stop there. Vika, anything you would add from the town standpoint about where we are with the budget?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I think that, there's a lot of big ticket items that more or less are out of the town's control that the town has to focus on in the upcoming budget season that were not expected last year's budget process. As far as what the select board has to date, I took the information that Aaron provided me on Sunday and inputted into the system. And so once you kind of start talking a little bit more about the school budget, just so then you understand what the select board has and vice versa, they have the document inputted into the entire trio data that we use for to show us the overall budget. Those numbers are going to be slightly adjusted just by $1 or $2 because in that system we round up, and I always round up to the dollar rather than round down. And so there will be a slight little change by $1 or $2 based on the document the Excel document that Aaron shared with you. Other than that, I think it was simple for me. It was a pretty smooth process in communication with Aaron as far as getting the information and putting it into the system. I was happy to see the results in the overall budget. Your numbers this year definitely have a positive impact on the entire budget, which I think just makes it a little bit easier to take a breath and think that this is maybe possible moving forward. So
That's the other big
It's well
picture thing I
appreciated.
forgot to mention. As I looked at and heard about unofficially bird in our house, sad that it's happening the way it's happening. The positive message, I guess, is the savings in the budget for the school this year, and that corresponding with a year that the town is getting hit pretty hard. So the positive is that hopefully there's some offsets there, and that'll have help us have jointly less of an impact on taxpayers. Sad that we're down in our numbers with the school, but positive that we're up with the revenue that the school is generating from the kids coming over. So, but a good yin and yang of the school budget being far more favorable to the taxpayers, while the town budget is more challenging for the taxpayers. I mentioned that a little bit too. Turn it over to you.
Our debt service.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I think as, you've seen in the initial numbers, so again, I'm Aaron Townsend. We meet a few of you for the first time. And this is my first budget process, so feel free to redirect me in terms of historical engagements. But, yeah, I mean, we're at a point that's, essentially kind of structural in nature in terms of our, not just for this coming year, but ongoing with, the couple of primary factors that are driving that change are the last debt service payment, which is down about $80,000 from last year, and then we'll step down to be completely off the books. So I know that's been a long time coming, anticipated, I think, in school community in, but recognize that that was part of the investment that the community made, 10 years ago and broke away, and so now finally realizing at this point that financial relationship. So that's a big one. Then the others you're kind of alluding to, which is certainly our middle school and high school numbers are down heading into next year, and so that generates, at least in the immediate term, reductions in both tuition costs to Yarmouth substantially, and then kind of corresponding increases in our CTC contract and transportation. So all of the associated costs, there's special education cost reductions, things like that in there as well. So those, do, make for significant changes this year, right? That's what you see. We do have an increase in some anticipated budgeted revenues. So certainly the most noticeable is budgeting for tuition, and I think we're comfortable in meeting or exceeding that for the mainland students who are coming over. So all those, we project we've had a great year thus far with our first 4 mainland students. We're projecting to increase that next year to be between 6 and 8, and for overall enrollment in 2024 is what we anticipate in school next year. So that's increased revenue. We have gotten into a good routine, predictable routine with our food service meals reimbursements. So we're budgeting kind of a conservative figure, but using that as budgeted revenue as well. And then we have historically gotten a small federal grant that subsequently kind of defrays the cost of our special education teacher. So it's part of the federal kind of entitlement. We feel comfortable in it sustaining over at least the next fiscal year to budget against. We've had about that figure for many times and for some reimbursement. So it feels like it makes sense to actually get the budgeted revenue, not just the captured revenue on the back end. And then we had a little bit higher state contribution. We will always be a minimum receiver in the language of kind of the state education formula, but despite the debt service payment dropping off, which had been a portion of kind of our state contribution, we had primarily gotten it for some portion of our debt service payment, as well as for 50% of special education costs, which goes back 2 years, so it's kind of trailing 2 years. So what remains is the 50% of the special education costs, but because of costs 2 years ago, those were, that's up slightly. So those increased revenues, I think you saw in the total, we had an overall 50% increase of non-local revenue, right? An expenditure increase of about 11% initially. We still have a few things we're finalizing in terms of some adjustments teacher contract, and kind of those things. We've built in some assumptions to it, so feel relatively safe. And then we just had discussion at our last meeting about some opportunity with the numbers, where we're at, how to utilize some resources, whether they would be local or in one of our other federal grants. We're trying to ascertain kind of how if we can count on it next year for some technology purchases. The laptops kids are using are about 2013, so we're ready for a refresh for our devices, for some of the kids. So, but that's it. Other capital things that we're looking at, capital improvements like heat pumps, where the heat pump conversion being a primary line, we're kind of overdue to replace the oven in the kitchen, which wasn't things that were not a part of that, but we feel pretty comfortable with the amount of reserves we have, and those have been appropriated for those purposes, so we anticipate utilizing those for any of those kind of purchases, hoping, expecting from our projections in the past few years that we have the FY24 audit, and then even for FY25, we anticipate additional potential unneeded funds because we allocated. So I think the discussion last week was that this kind of structural reduction, has been on to coming for taxpayers, so I can bring that forward. We do just to acknowledge them. There are kind of, despite those big attractive numbers, in terms of reductions and less local contribution, we face similar staffing cost challenges, so it does mask some increases on that side in terms of the same kinds of pressures, that you spoke about that we're similarly facing, and we have some anticipated special education coming here as well that's already included within the context of the proposed budget. But those don't pop in the same way that they might be different here. We have such offsets in places. So I think, that's what's been laid out. And I think one question, and we follow up, but just on the audit, timeline.
The timeline,
Yeah.
so they were here, they came yesterday. They were supposed to be here a couple of weeks ago and had to cancel, and there has been a several month delay in the audit process for this year that was more or less out of the town's control. And yesterday when the woman was here, we connected about what caused the delay. And basically the audit firm has reconfigured the process and how they gather the information. So they've created a new planning division within the firm, and they collect all of the information in July and August, and they start the planning process. And if there's any journal entries that we need to make to kind of clear out one year and start the next year, then that happens. So back in January, February, I received information about the journal entries, thinking that because I had provided so much information in July and August, the way I had done the previous years, that we were ahead of schedule. Well, then when I received the information to do the journal entries and that was done, there was kind of a miscommunication where, oh, well, this is picking up now the audit process. So basically, long story short is there was a lot of miscommunication with the new division of the planning department and the audit manager that's taken over the process, that kind of made it so several of their towns are in this position that we are. So we're a little behind schedule in terms of where we would have ideally have been because we had the opportunity to be on a regular schedule. But they do know our budget process, and what they're hoping to do is, they said that the several towns that they have in this position, they're doing and focusing on them to ensure that they can provide us. So they're hoping to provide us one of the meetings in April to be able to have, if not at least a pretty firm draft. So then we have the information like undesignated fund balance and the overall numbers from the previous year to be able to have as a contributing factor into finalizing finalizing the budget, so. And then this has really been a learning curve in terms of us communicating better, or not necessarily us communicating better, but the firm knowing the feedback from me that I told her that I would like to avoid these delays for the next fiscal year and to anything that we can do on our end to be kind of the pushing force for the planning implementation team, then hopefully we can have it back by now, so we have the audit for the start of the budget process, so. And they, one question that I had for you that I was gonna be reaching out is, they would like to know what the next deadline is for the school for the extension, in order to try to see if we can maybe avoid having to do the extension to accommodate that, but that's something that we can connect on. And this is all new to the select board. I just found out about this yesterday.
So, speaking by when do we expect to have the audit at this point?
So right now, they're planning for one of the meetings in no later than April to be able to have for us the information. So the audit manager, it just received the information that she needed yesterday to start it. And she was unaware that their planning function division had the information prior. So she admitted that it was a big disconnect within their firm that caused this little delay. And so it was good for me to know that, because that allowed me to provide the feedback in terms of, I did everything on our schedule in a timely fashion, yet we're still a little behind schedule, so.
Yeah, any other comments, questions from the board relative to
What's-
Aaron's presentation or
What's the normal
Well, I was just wondering about federal funding, is that at risk in any way at this point?
We don't have much exposure, I would say. We only receive, annually our federal funding resources come in two. One is, the special ed loan entitlement grant, so that's only about $9,000. We feel confident when the initial flurry of executive actions, that was one area that communicated that funding would remain consistent, so we feel pretty confident in that. That's part of the federal block grant. Then we get usually about $25,000 in what's called the REAP grant, Rural Education Grant. That's the one that we have less information about. It was on our agenda for correspondence. I did happen to get an email from the Department of Education today that seemed to be a routine email talking about the timeline for the application and so forth. I wasn't sure what it was when I opened it, but so that seemed promising that, they were planning towards, a typical application period and so forth, so.
Let's hope that stays there.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I don't know how the only other place, so that's, collectively, less than $40,000 that we have, that's directly coming from federal government.
I just have a logistical question. When do the audits generally completed by?
Typically late fall into early winter.
Carol?
Yeah, so I was curious about the REAP grant, and I don't see it on your revenue here.
It historically has not been on the budgeted revenue. It neither had the special ed in budgets passed. So it included the special ed one because of our confidence around that as the anticipated revenue. And we hadn't had the information yet. We weren't sure about the REAP status whether.
But in terms of the required local contribution, would you subtract the REAP grant from what's required for the local contribution?
That's a discussion. Historically, it has not. The REAP grant was over and above, or at least that's ultimately how it was managed.
But we come back in the form of undesignated fund balance.
Right, yeah, excess revenue.
Oh, no, because it doesn't I mean, I think you're saying it's kind of used separately for
Yeah,
extra
right.
items,
Yes,
not
you're right,
shown
I'm
in
sorry.
the budget.
Yeah, things would be charged to
Right.
historically,
So it wouldn't come back through the undesignated.
no, right, and it works on a reimbursement basis, so we only
And
get what we expect.
so if I understand, I had a couple questions on the 25-26 enrollment. You have, resident and mainland, and the two ones, the two red ones are those,
Those were pending at the time, where the black ones are ones that we had confirmed, enrollment agreements for.
Yeah.
And two prospects that we were.
and so this is your projected enrollment for the Big Island Schools 22 for next year?
Yes.
Okay. And you're pretty confident about that? And
Yes,
so what is
we've converted those two blacks to,
Okay.
reds to blacks.
And so the tuition, you have 30,000 projected for tuition for 2026, so what is the tuition to the
Well, the tuition is 5,000, so that was, we budgeted it on the low end of our, increases, just in case we heard that number, so that's the equivalent of 6 seats.
Right, and you actually have potentially 8.
Right, yeah,
And then what about transportation, who pays for
the
that?
families pay, so they purchase this.
And how much does that cost them about?
About 500.
So it's a pretty good deal for them, right, for 5,500, that's what they pay.
Per school year?
Yeah, for, yeah.
Then, I just wanted to go through so I can make sure I understand, so the debt, they pay off the debt, that's about 80,400 something, right? Then the reduction in tuition due to the lower enrollment and the upper grades is about 58,000.
It's the combo, I think it's closer to 75, let's see, it's at the bottom of the elementary education. It's essentially 28 for reduced middle school and then another 48 for, so it's the, of the.
So you have, I guess,
Then-
where are you, what department are you in?
8003 elementary education,
Yeah.
and the lines 8318 and 8319.
So okay. So what did you, I thought you just said 70,000, it's,
Right, because it's a reduction in middle school. The reduction in middle school of 27,889, and then a reduction at high school, it says secondary, but it's high school.
right, so I'm just curious, in that department, you have a total difference of 58,000, but the only other place that would be, cause there's increases going, okay.
Yeah.
So basically $70,000 round numbers, less tuition that we have to pay,
Right.
22,000 round numbers, and less transportation expenses that we have to pay, and $80,000, 400 and something, less in debt service, and that's all driven by enrollment, distribution, and number changes, right? So that's like 180,000, something like that.
Yeah.
So, and then, can you explain the department 8005, you have a drop in middle school tuition of 57,000, and then you have an increase of 38,000 on ed tech salaries under special ed. So what's driving those two things?
Two separate things. The reduction in the middle school tuition is a programmatic change for GP residents and their program on, Yarmouth.
Yeah.
So that's what's driving that. And then the increase in ed tech salary includes a 1.0 an additional full-time ed tech for anticipated special education services next year that we'll provide.
And this year we have a part-time ed tech for special ed?
Yeah, it's 0.5. Yeah, we have a full-time
So you're
intake,
going from 0.5 to 1.0,
to 1.5
1.5,
in special education.
ed tech.
Correct.
And is that eligible under because it's under special ed, is that eligible for partial reimbursement?
Correct. And there is a bill in front of the legislature this session to increase the portion in the education formula that's minimum receivers specifically. So this is one of the bills that very specifically would have a significant impact for us to increase the percentage from 50% currently to it's either 60 or 65 for minimum receiver districts such as ourselves. So, but yes, it's essentially that cost center, that special education is what's.
So overall, that's up 15,000.
Yeah, for this year. Yeah. There's revenue and given the increased costs will be required to kind of shoulder over the next few years. We anticipate our state revenue on a trailing fashion to increase a little bit.
And then the revenue, the significant increase for the state, 279, so is that a number you already have from the state?
Yes.
They feel pretty solid about that?
Yep, that was typically what was released at the end of January in terms of, the similar timing. I mean, it can change and has, I've experienced that, so we'll monitor it, but.
So is it fair to say the big drop in the school budget is due to the enrollment changes, really, right?
Yeah, and then secondary, that sort of thing, yeah, the cumulative amount of dollars, the enrollment is a bigger driver, but the debt service is as well.
And then the upper grades, we go from 17 to 11 for next year, and then in the lower grades, 16 to 22, hopefully.
Other questions?
I have a couple of questions. I'm sure you probably already looked into, but are there any state grant opportunities for technology replacement in terms of laptops?
There have not been recently the MLTI program, which only targeted middle school and high school, but that as well has not been funded for some time. That was the main learning technology, the initial one-to-one kind of initiative from 20 years ago, I guess. But so not, and there was so much federal spending on technology over the past 5 years that it's not been. So lots of ESSER money.
And then,
But that's where we use our REAP grant, is primarily
Yep.
technology.
yeah,
So you
I've
don't
seen
see the
reimbursement for the computers.
Right, so you
in
don't
the
see
past.
the technology called out in the budget item because historically
Yeah.
it's been covered by the REAP grants, as have field trips. So as long as we keep getting the REAP money, then there's no costs that we're passing on into our school budget needs.
And then my second question was, so you have Department 8002, Office of the Principal. 8217 is it looks like it's a new line for stipends.
Yeah.
What is that for?
And we can talk about where to place it or represent it, but that is the lead teacher stipend in our.
Okay.
And it's new because it's when,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the history was prior to
the
this.
history was there's a percentage of your salary if you're the lead teacher that is an add-on with the responsibilities that one takes on lead teacher. Our current lead teacher, when she came on, was a very experienced teacher, and part of her contract negotiation with our former superintendent was, would you be willing to skip that? And she said yes, but it's a lot of work, and so she's not asking for anything past, but felt it was something for which some remuneration for the amount of work involved in it. It should, as we did, feel that it should be shared. It's in the teacher contract.
with every other lead teacher you've ever had, it's come out of their regular salary line, so it's not an unusual thing that I've seen with the booking that we've done over the years. But
Yeah.
that was a new number that I saw, so I was just curious
Yeah, and I'm
what that
happy
would
to,
be for.
align it appropriately to trio places.
The only other point I would offer, and I will preface this by saying, Nika's very kind to put the trio stuff into Excel so we can play games with it, and then I play games with it, and I always overassume. However, if you look at the Excel spreadsheet that was part of what she sent to us, does the school have that too, the one that combines both budgets?
I sent it to Aaron, but I didn't send it to the school board.
At this version, and tell me how far off I am here, but the expense totals 4,344,000, revenue totals 4,341,000. There's a shortfall with the numbers that are currently in here of $2,300, which would relate to an overall increase, if you will, of $2,300, which is less than it's 0.05%. So a half of 100%. So basically flat. Revenue still needs to be trued up. There's a lot of talk. We haven't loaded the actual numbers that we're gonna go with for nonprofit contributions. We just had that contribution last week, and those are still sitting in there at the initial forecast, not the requested numbers. But at this point, that's fairly encouraging. And I would again attribute that to a combination of the town being challenged and the school, for lots of reasons, some good, some not so good, coming forward with a number that offsets some of the negative impacts from the tax segment.
I do think though, you gotta keep in mind that we might have to bond, some more money for a project. And so this bond, it's great, this bond is being paid off, but then it will be adding, in a sense, back in a bond payment. So, we don't know what that might be, but, I think we have to be careful we don't make it sound too rosy, because I think a bond is pretty likely.
And we are meeting to that end with the finance committee on March 12th, I believe it is. That's our first meeting with the finance committee. Don't expect rock solid answers or direction at that meeting, but hopefully it gets us down that path of a long-term approach to capital and bonding. Given things that are rolling off, given the changes in interest rates for bonding, and given the capital challenges that we face with things like bargaining.
And then I guess Chip would know, so you've talked with the school about their capital needs?
Yeah, in a general sense, but we know that it's hard to get our arms around and so forth, but we've approached part of it, the maintenance and what the school in the reserve account is some money, and we have done an estimate of that, what would be needed to be in there for an annual maintenance based on your but we haven't gone into the details of the school department level now.
David, you said something?
Yeah, just looking at the contributions, I know it's not much, but all the numbers are the same as last year. Does that mean that all of the nonprofits are asking for the exact same amount of money this year? No, it's joint budget discussion.
Yeah, I know, but that's several pages, This is nonprofit contributions, that's not what we're talking about, we're talking about.
But they've not been updated, David, to the request numbers.
And we haven't decided.
Correct. We haven't had that conversation. But
Being new to the school budget, can I ask for an explanation of some of the line items?
sure,
So Vika asked about the stipend, which was 8217, what's 8408?
8408. That has been a place where our social worker, it's been a different function, but that's the line that the social worker is from, who was here one day.
Okay. I had another question. 8617 contracted services.
That had, that line has historically gone to, grounds maintenance. And since the rec center has resumed, ownership, they're doing the maintenance of the field, that primarily reflects the reduction in our costs, because we had carried the contract for field mowing and so forth.
Okay, well, that makes sense. 8707,
Professional service. That is that's primarily the CTC contract. There's a, yeah.
I think one other line. 8708, a lot of repairs for a new bus.
Well, that's what,
That's why.
yeah,
That's why it went
that's why
down.
it's,
It's
yeah,
down
going
by-
down, yeah. I
But
think you
you'll
would
still-
see, I would just offer that on the whole transportation category. I think you see, at least for the near term, kind of a reduction in cost by the change in our kind of transportation scenario, both bus and reduced costs, both in terms of hours, repairs, et cetera, barging. We don't have to barge it off the island twice a year, bigger barge and so forth.
Yeah,
Are
that's-
you happy with the choice that you guys made with the bus?
And just what, to follow up on that, why is the salary lower for next year?
Because it's, it's been a reduction in hours, because we now only require, a driver, because staff can drive the bus throughout the day, so we don't have to have somebody on call throughout the day, they can take them over to the library or wherever. That was part of the strategy, so we just have somebody who does the morning run, because it starts so early to get the secondary kids down to the school boat, and then the afternoon run. So it's been a reduction.
You don't have the
in hours.
bus driver coming and picking the kids up after pre-K and bringing them to
Right,
kids' place.
right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, literally, yes, that bus driving here and there.
They just
So-
run away instead.
So yeah, so it's been, compared to budgeted hours for FY '25 this year, it's reduced.
Other thoughts?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any questions for the town? Kind of midway on our work, but,
I'd love to hear a little bit about the, where the school sustainability, the priority is in the town's comprehensive plan.
school sustainability.
Well, I mean, we heard about obviously the challenges that are being faced with Stone Pier and, you know, but keeping the school open, anything I have read historically is it's a priority to the town, so, and we just haven't discussed it tonight, so.
Well, the comp plan is technically out of date, supposed to be renewed every 10 years. There've been some political changes in Augusta that have had an impact on that, but we're back into the world of the comp plan being a requirement. And planning board is moving forward, and we've suggested that they consider several options to gain assistance in helping rewrite or update the comprehensive plan. I was on the initial comprehensive plan committee, as was Carol and maybe others who were here tonight. Sustaining the year-round community would be, I would say, the short way to describe the goals of the comprehensive plan. And one of the key strategies in sustaining year-round community is having school be healthy, not just here, but vibrant and healthy, to the extent of attracting families, young couples who might eventually have kids to be out here. Part of that involves affordable housing, part of that involves keeping taxes down so people can afford to be out here. So it's not been part of our budget conversation, it's part of our strategic conversation, but the comp plan does definitely need to be updated and brought up to date with some of the challenges that exist today that did not exist back then. Affordable housing was a challenge back then, nothing like it is today. Sea level rise was something we moved on back then, but nothing like the challenge. So, I don't know if that answers your.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
I would say that the better we can approach housing, the better that positions the school. And I really wanna acknowledge having those students come over, keeping the numbers up, does a lot to keep the school vibrant. So I really wanted to recognize that. I was in on the conversations a couple of years ago to get that going, and that's been a really another leg under the table for the school, getting these kids over here. So, thank you.
I just have a question of curiosity is on that topic, do you have an upper level to how many students you could bring over here?
I mean, I think 24, not 24 that would bring over a total enrollment of 24, so we're always thinking about it in the offset of what we have in terms of resident island. Both for a few factors, and just our kind of infrastructure is now designed somewhat around those numbers for us and the space that we have here. And I think there's this ongoing balance of preserving what makes us unique. So we need to have enough to kind of be vibrant and have the kind of academic and social peers kids need. At the same time, we're not trying to be, a big mainland school, right? Those things. So some uniqueness, some of what's a draw, both for island families, as well as our mainland families coming over, is the small size, right, and that level of personalization. So that's at least our working theory.
Is there a point at which you would have to hire more teachers to accommodate?
I mean, that's where, yes, if we wanted to go, and particularly, there have been some initial conversations about, if our grade span configuration changed in either way, if we had more historically, there has been more staffing for the pre-K range, right? Our numbers there are smaller now, so we don't have dedicated staffing there, but if we had consideration, we are gonna have 2 students who are in the 6th grade next year, and if there was any consideration moving forward, that likely will be. But I think our initial goal, kind of that initial visioning, was kind of filling out latent capacity that we had in the building, and I think that takes us to about that 24 number to exist. Yeah.
Not just the building, but the staffing.
Yeah, the current staffing, yeah. The addition, the staffing ad that is in here in the special education line is kind of separate. But yeah, we think they'll have us classes of 10 to 12, I feel like that's the right.
What do you mean about 6th grade?
We have 2 students who are gonna be in the 6th grade that'll be here next year. We have a larger conversation that we'll go down with families about, just as we've got inquiries from families about middle school, and so we'll be engaging in that kind of.
One of them is from the mainland.
One's from me.
When your families are looking at coming here from the mainland, are you selecting among them? Are they applying and you'll say, well, be selective on who we
Yep.
are accepting?
Yes, we made a decision, and I think, because of the small numbers, we're returning, and to be able to give us, our strategy is really to kind of balance the classes from as a priority for us, so yes, they apply. We have not really done any reach out, it's all been word of mouth, and we build our seats, and we anticipate we'll have, further inquiries that we'll be able to, accommodate this year. But yeah, they apply and, they come out, we have a protocol, they come out for visit consults.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think, Erin, you would ask me when, I have it, it's in my archive somewhere, but when we seceded, we were approved for K through 5. So I think you probably will want to check in with the Department of Education.
Yeah. We've been down this place.
Because we were pretty adamant at the time to only go through 5, because the community did not want 6th graders at the time.
Right.
Get what you need.
Yeah, I think so.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
And I know we have then in a month, essentially, we have a kind of follow-up conversation, so.
By which point, hopefully we'll have a lot more information,
Okay.
maybe even some of the
We
others.
should be, yeah.
Right up.
Those timelines.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you all.
Nice.
Recess for a moment.